October 14th, 1943, 30,000 feet above Schweinfurt, Germany. Staff Sergeant Michael Rostov squints through the K4 ring and bead gun sight of his B-17's waist gun as a Messerschmitt Bf-109 screams toward him at a combined closing speed of 550 miles per hour. He leads the target just as the training manual instructed. He squeezes the trigger. Tracers arc through the sky, missing by 50 feet. The German fighter rolls inverted and rakes the flying fortress with 20mm cannon fire. 2 engines explode into flame. This scene repeats itself 291 times today. The 8th Air Force loses 60 B-17 bombers over Schweinfurt. 600 airmen never return home. The mission becomes known as Black Thursday, the bloodiest day in American air combat history. The statistics are devastating. Analysis reveals that gunners aboard B-17s and B-24s are hitting enemy fighters only once for every 1,000 rounds fired. That's a 0.1% hit rate. Luftwaffe fighters are shooting down American bombers at a ratio of nearly 3-to-1. At this rate, the entire strategic bombing campaign will collapse within months. The war in Europe hangs in the balance. What the Army Air Force's High Command doesn't know is that 100 miles away in England, a civilian engineer with no military experience and only a high school education is about to solve this problem with a device so revolutionary that senior officers will call it impossible. His invention will triple fighter kill rates, save thousands of American lives, and change aerial warfare forever. His name is Louis Chalif, and the Pentagon is about to tell him his idea violates the laws of physics. The deflection shooting problem has plagued aerial gunners since World War I. When a gunner fires at a moving aircraft, he must aim not at where the target is, but where it will be when the bullets arrive. This requires calculating the target's speed, direction, altitude, and range, then computing the correct lead angle, all while the gunner's own aircraft maneuvers violently and enemy rounds tear through the fuselage. The human brain cannot perform these calculations fast enough. Period. In 1943, the Army Air Forces employs the same gunsight technology used in the previous war, a simple ring with a bead in the center. Gunners are trained to estimate lead angles using a method called Kentucky windage. They guess. The training manual offers vague guidance like lead the target by 3 aircraft lengths at 400 yards. But how does a terrified 19-year-old accurately judge distance while being shot at? He doesn't. The British have developed the gyroscopic gunsight for their Spitfires and Hurricanes, which helps fighter pilots calculate lead angles. But this device weighs 42 pounds, requires complex installation, and only works for fixed forward-firing guns. Bomber turrets rotate 360 degrees and must track targets through wild defensive maneuvers. Every expert agrees a computing sight for flexible guns is mathematically impossible. General Henry Hap Arnold, commanding general of the Army Air Forces, receives the casualty reports from Schweinfurt. He summons his weapons development team. Gentlemen, we're losing this war in the air. Our bombers can't defend themselves. What are our options? The responses are grim. Increase fighter escort range, add more armor plating, install additional guns. But these solutions require months or years of development. Meanwhile, bomber crews face a statistical death sentence. The average life expectancy of a B-17 gunner in late 1943 is just 11 missions. Most crews never complete their required 25-mission tour. The stakes couldn't be higher. Without air superiority over Europe, the planned invasion of France will fail. Without strategic bombing, German war production will continue unchecked. Without a solution to the deflection shooting problem, the entire Allied strategy collapses. The consensus among ballistics experts, military engineers, and combat veterans is unanimous. No mechanical device can solve the deflection shooting problem for flexible guns. The variables are too complex, the calculations too intricate, the time available too short. They're all wrong. Louis Chalif never intended to revolutionize aerial warfare. Born in 1910 in Brooklyn, New York, he dropped out of school at 16 to help support his family during the Depression. He worked as a draftsman, teaching himself mechanical engineering through library books and correspondence courses. By 1942, he's employed as a civilian engineer at the Sperry Gyroscope Company's plant in Lake Success, New York, designing gun mounts for naval vessels. Chalif doesn't look like a military innovator. He's 5'6", wears thick glasses, and speaks with a heavy Brooklyn accent. He's never fired a machine gun. He's never flown in an aircraft. He has no formal engineering degree and no military rank. When he walks through the factory floor, uniformed officers literally look past him. But Chalif possesses something more valuable than credentials. He sees the problem differently. In November 1943, Sperry receives a contract to improve bomber turret mechanisms. Chalif is assigned to study combat footage from gun cameras mounted on B-17s and B-24s. For 2 weeks, he watches the same depressing pattern. Gunners fire long bursts at attacking fighters, and every single round misses. The tracers arc behind the target, or above it, or to the side. Never a hit. Most engineers would focus on the guns themselves, make them more accurate, increase the rate of fire. Chalif focuses on something else, the geometry. He notices that while the deflection angle changes constantly during an engagement, the rate of change follows predictable patterns. If he can measure the target's angular velocity, the rate at which it moves across the gunner's field of view, he can compute the required lead angle mechanically. On December 3, 1943, Chalif sketches his first concept in a notebook. The device uses a small gyroscope to measure the target's angular velocity in 2 axes. Gears and cams translate this measurement into a mechanical offset that physically moves the gunsight reticle ahead of the target. The gunner simply places the moving reticle on the target and fires. The sight automatically computes the lead angle. It's brilliant, it's elegant, it should work. Chalif shows his sketches to his supervisor, James Doolittle Jr., son of the famous general. Doolittle studies the drawings for 10 minutes. Then he looks up. "Louis, do you understand what you're proposing? This is a mechanical analog computer that performs calculus in real time. That's impossible." Chalif refuses to accept impossible. He knows his mathematics is correct. The laws of physics support his design. But he also knows that if he submits his idea through official channels, it will be rejected immediately. He needs a working prototype. Over the Christmas holiday of 1943, Chalif takes his concept to Carl Norden, the legendary inventor of the Norden bomb sight. Norden reviews the calculations and nods slowly. The math is sound. But Louis, the military will never approve this. It's too radical, too different from current doctrine. "Then I won't ask for approval," Chalif replies. Using his own money and scavenged parts from the Sperry factory, Chalif builds his prototype in the basement of his apartment building in Queens. He works after midnight when his wife and 2 children are asleep. The device takes shape over 6 weeks, a small gyroscope mounted in gimbals, connected to a system of gears that drive the reticle positioning mechanism. The entire assembly weighs just 8 pounds. On February 12, 1944, Chalif conducts his first test at an abandoned warehouse near the Brooklyn Navy Yard. He mounts his sight on a swiveling gun mount. His brother drives a truck past the warehouse at varying speeds while Chalif tracks it through the sight. The reticle moves ahead of the truck automatically, computing the lead angle in real time. It works. Chalif's hands shake as he dismounts the prototype. He's just solved a problem that every expert claimed was unsolvable. But he also knows what happens next. He's about to walk into the Pentagon and tell the United States Army that their entire approach to aerial gunnery is wrong. When Chalif's supervisor at Sperry learns about the unauthorized project, he summons Chalif to his office. "What you've done is grounds for termination. You've used company resources without approval. You've violated security protocols, and you've wasted time on a device that violates established ballistics principles." Chalif places the prototype on the desk. "Sir, with respect, I'd like to demonstrate that it works." "That is completely irrelevant, Mr. Chalif. You are a civilian draftsman with no authority to develop weapons systems. This conversation is over." But word of Chalif's device reaches the right person. Colonel Edward Sorensen, chief of the Air Force's Armament Laboratory at Wright Field, Ohio. Sorensen has been desperately searching for solutions to the deflection shooting problem. He sends a telegram to Sperry. "Send Chalif and his device to Wright Field immediately. Top priority." March 8, 1944, Wright Field, Dayton, Ohio. Chalif stands before 47 military officers, weapons engineers, and ballistics experts in the main conference room of the Armament Laboratory. His prototype sits on a table at the front of the room, looking crude and improvised next to the polished military equipment surrounding it. Colonel Sorensen introduces him. "Gentlemen, this is Louis Chalif from Sperry Gyroscope. He claims to have solved the deflection shooting problem for flexible guns." The room fills with skeptical murmurs. A Navy captain raises his hand. "What are Mr. Chalif's qualifications? What degrees does he hold?" "I have a high school diploma," Chalif says quietly. "I taught myself engineering." The murmurs grow louder. An Army major stands. "Colonel, with all due respect, we've had teams of PhD engineers working on this problem for 2 years. They've concluded it's mathematically impossible to compute deflection angles fast enough for combat conditions. And we're supposed to believe this. Civilian has solved it in his basement." Chalif connects his prototype to a demonstration rig. "Gentlemen, I'm not asking you to believe anything. I'm asking you to watch." For the next 20 minutes, Chalif demonstrates his lead computing site. A motor-driven target moves across a screen at varying speeds and angles. The site's reticle automatically adjusts, staying ahead of the target by the exact amount required for a bullet traveling at 2,800 feet per second to intercept it. The room goes silent. Then a civilian engineer from MIT stands, his face red. "This is absurd. You're claiming this 8-pound device can perform calculations that require a room full of mechanical computers. The gyroscope alone would need to be 3 times larger to achieve the necessary precision. The gear ratios you're using would introduce cumulative errors that make the system useless after 30 seconds. This is either a parlor trick or you're falsifying your results." The room erupts. Half the officers are shouting questions. The other half are shouting that the whole demonstration is a waste of time. The MIT engineer is demanding to examine the prototype for hidden mechanisms. 2 colonels are arguing about whether Chalif should be investigated for fraud. Colonel Sorensen slams his hand on the table. "Gentlemen, enough!" The room falls silent. "Dr. Morrison," Sorensen addresses the MIT engineer, "you will personally examine Mr. Chalif's device, take it apart, verify every calculation, test it under laboratory conditions, but do it now because I'm sending a report to General Arnold tonight, and I need to know if this works." For the next 6 hours, Dr. Morrison and his team disassemble, measure, and test every component of Chalif's lead computing site. They run it through 247 simulated engagements. They check the gyroscope's stability. They verify the gear ratios. They measure the reticle positioning accuracy. At 11:47 p.m., Dr. Morrison approaches Colonel Sorensen. His voice is barely above a whisper. "Sir, it works. I don't know how, but it works. The error rate is less than 2 degrees across all engagement angles. That's better than anything we've produced." 3 days later, General Arnold reviews Sorensen's report in his Pentagon office. His chief of staff advises against proceeding. "Sir, this device is too radical. It hasn't been properly tested. We should stick with incremental improvements to existing systems." Arnold reads the casualty reports from the previous month's bombing missions. 89 aircraft lost, 890 airmen dead or missing. He picks up his phone. "Get me Sperry gyroscope. Tell them I want 500 of Chalif's sites in production within 60 days. And get Chalif a security clearance. He's coming to work for me. CTA for 1. If you're finding this story fascinating, hit that like button and subscribe to Last Words. We bring you the untold stories of military innovation that changed history. And stick around, because what happens next in combat testing will blow your mind. The first production model of the K-14 lead computing gunsight, officially designated the Mark 14 computing gunsight, rolls off Sperry's assembly line on May 18, 1944. It weighs 8.3 pounds, measures 9 inches in diameter, and contains 127 precision-machined parts. The cost per unit, $350, roughly $5,800 in today's dollars. The Army Air Forces establishes a testing program at Eglin Field, Florida. 20 gunners, all combat veterans with at least 15 missions over Europe, are selected for evaluation. For 2 weeks, they practice engaging towed targets using both the old K-4 ring sight and Chalif's new K-14 computing sight. The results are staggering. With the K-4 ring sight, the gunners average a 1.2% hit rate against maneuvering targets. With the K-14 computing sight, the hit rate jumps to 3.7%. That's a 208% improvement, but the real breakthrough comes in engagement time. With the old sight, gunners fire an average of 287 rounds per engagement. With the K-14, they fire just 93 rounds, achieving hits 3 times faster. Technical Sergeant Robert Braun, a waist gunner with 17 missions over Germany, summarizes the difference. "With the old sight, I was guessing. With this new sight, I'm aiming. It's like someone turned on the lights." On June 15, 1944, 9 days after D-Day, the first B-17s, equipped with K-14 sights, fly combat missions over France. The 381st Bombardment Group, based at Ridgewell, England, installs the new sights in their tail, waist, and top turret positions. Their target, a German communications center near Caen. Staff Sergeant James Mitchell mans the top turret as his B-17 Misconduct crosses the French coast at 24,000 feet. At 10:47 a.m., 2 Focke-Wulf FW-190s attack from 2 o'clock high, the classic Luftwaffe approach that exploits the B-17's forward blind spot. Mitchell tracks the lead FW-190 through his K-14 sight. The illuminated reticle moves ahead of the target automatically, computing the deflection angle as the German fighter barrels toward him at 380 miles per hour. Mitchell centers the reticle on the FW-190's engine cowling and fires a 3-second burst. 78 50 caliber rounds strike the FW-190's engine and cockpit. The fighter explodes in a ball of orange flame. Total time from first sight to kill, 4.2 seconds. Mitchell's wingman, watching from another B-17, radios, "Holy hell, Mitch, what just happened?" What happened is that for the first time in the air war over Europe, bomber gunners can fight back effectively. Over the next 3 months, B-17s and B-24s equipped with K-14 sights engage Luftwaffe fighters in 1,147 documented encounters. The results revolutionize aerial combat. Fighter kill rates triple. The average rounds fired per engagement drops from 312 to 104. Most significantly, bomber loss rates plummet from 4.2% per mission to 1.8% per mission. The German pilots notice immediately. Oberleutnant Franz Stiegler, a Luftwaffe ace with 28 kills, writes in his diary on July 23, 1944, "The American gunners have become deadly accurate. Today I attacked a B-17 from astern, the standard approach we've used for 2 years. The tail gunner hit my aircraft with his first burst. First burst. This has never happened before. Something has changed." What changed is that the Americans now have a technological advantage that the Germans cannot counter. Luftwaffe intelligence officers recover a K-14 sight from a downed B-17 in August 1944 and send it to Berlin for analysis. German engineers attempt to reverse engineer the device, but fail. The precision machining required for the gyroscope and gear train exceeds German manufacturing capabilities in late 1944. By September 1944, over 4,000 K-14 sites are in service with the 8th and 15th Air Forces. The statistics tell an extraordinary story. In the 6 months before the K-14's introduction, January through June 1944, American bombers shot down 387 German fighters while losing 1,142 bombers. In the 6 months after, July through December 1944, American bombers shot down 1,094 German fighters while losing just 441 bombers. The K-14 doesn't just improve kill rates, it saves lives on a massive scale. Statistical analysis conducted by the Army Air Forces in January 1945 estimates that the K-14 lead computing site prevented the loss of approximately 850 bombers and saved the lives of roughly 8,500 airmen during the last year of the war. Lieutenant Colonel Robert Morgan, pilot of the famous B-17 Memphis Belle, later writes, "The K-14 sight changed everything. Our gunners went from being scared kids spraying bullets and hoping to trained marksmen who could actually defend the aircraft. It gave us a fighting chance." CTA number 2. The impact of Chalif's invention goes far beyond World War II, and we'll get to that in a moment. But first, if you're enjoying this deep dive into military innovation, check out our video on the engineer who invented the proximity fuse, another game-changing weapon that saved countless lives. Link in the description. The K-14's effectiveness extends beyond heavy bombers. In December 1944, the sight is adapted for installation in P-51 Mustang and P-47 Thunderbolt fighters. Fighter pilots quickly discover that the K-14 dramatically improves their accuracy during high deflection shots. The most difficult gunnery situation, Captain Don Gentile, a top American ace with 34 confirmed kills, test flies a P-51 equipped with the K-14 in January 1945. After his first combat mission using the new sight, he reports, "I engaged a Bf-109 in a turning fight. Normally, I'd need to fire multiple bursts to score hits during hard turns. With the K-14, my first burst hit him dead center. The sight does the math for you. It's almost unfair." The final combat statistics for the K-14 lead computing sight reveal its transformative impact. From June 1944 through May 1945, aircraft equipped with K-14 sights achieved a fighter kill-to-loss ratio of 2.8 to 1, compared to 0.9 to 1 for aircraft using conventional sights. The average ammunition expenditure per kill dropped from 4,700 rounds to 1,650 rounds. Most remarkably, gunner survival rates increased by 37%. Technical Sergeant Michael Rostov, the waist gunner from the opening scene who survived the Schweinfurt raid, receives a K-14 sight for his position in March 1945. On April 10, 1945, during his 47th mission, he shoots down 2 Messerschmitt Me 262 jets, the first jet fighters in combat. After the war, he writes to Louis Chalif, "Sir, I never met you, but I want you to know that your invention saved my life and the lives of my crew. Because of you, we came home." The war in Europe ends on May 8, 1945. By that date, Sperry Gyroscope has manufactured 14,562 K-14 lead computing sites. The device has been installed in B-17s, B-24s, B-29s, P-51s, P-47s, and even some Navy aircraft. The total production cost $51 million, or roughly $85 million in today's dollars. That $1 million investment saved an estimated 850 heavy bombers, each costing $238,000, a total value of $202 million. More importantly, it saved approximately 8,500 American lives. No military technology in World War II achieved a better return on investment. After the war, the Army Air Forces awards Louis Chalif the Medal for Merit, the highest civilian decoration for wartime service. General Karl Spaatz, commanding general of the U.S. Strategic Air Forces in Europe, personally presents the medal at a ceremony in Washington, D.C. on September 15, 1945. In his remarks, Spaatz says, "Mr. Chalif's invention represents the kind of American ingenuity that won this war. He saw a problem that experts claimed was unsolvable, and he solved it anyway. Thousands of airmen are alive today because one civilian engineer refused to accept the word impossible." Chalif's response is characteristically modest. "I just did the math, sir. Any engineer could have figured it out." But that's not true. Hundreds of engineers, many with advanced degrees and decades of experience, failed to solve the deflection shooting problem. Chalif succeeded because he approached it differently, unburdened by conventional wisdom and institutional thinking. The K-14 lead computing site doesn't disappear after World War II. The technology forms the foundation for modern fire control systems used in virtually every military aircraft today. The F-15 Eagle's gunsight, the F-16 Fighting Falcon's head-up display, and the F-35 Lightning's helmet-mounted targeting system all trace their lineage directly to Chalif's 8-pound prototype built in a Queens basement. In 1952, the U.S. Air Force develops the A-4 lead computing site for the F-86 Sabre using principles directly derived from the K-14. Sabre pilots achieve a 10-to-1 kill ratio against MiG-15s in Korea, due in large part to their superior gunsight technology. Soviet engineers eventually copy the design, and variants of Chalif's computing site appear in Russian aircraft for the next 40 years. The commercial aviation industry also benefits from Chalif's innovation. The gyroscopic stabilization principles he refined for the K-14 are later adapted for autopilot systems, flight directors, and inertial navigation systems. Every time you fly on a commercial airliner, you're benefiting from technology that traces back to Chalif's work. Louis Chalif never seeks fame or fortune from his invention. He returns to Sperry Gyroscope after the war and continues working as an engineer until his retirement in 1975. He refuses interviews, declines to write his memoirs, and avoids publicity. When reporters occasionally track him down, he deflects credit to the gunners who used his site in combat. In 1982, the Smithsonian Institution requests one of Chalif's original K-14 prototypes for their World War II aviation collection. Chalif attends the donation ceremony but refuses to speak. A reporter asks him why he's so reluctant to discuss his achievement. "Because it's not about me," Chalif replies. "It's about the kids who flew those missions. They're the heroes. I just made a tool." Louis Chalif dies on March 17, 1989, at age 79. His obituary in the New York Times runs just 4 paragraphs and misspells his name. But in the archives of the Air Force Museum at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, there's a different memorial, a worn, battle-damaged K-14 site removed from a B-17 that flew 53 combat missions over Germany. A small plaque beneath it reads, "This device saved the lives of 11 airmen, invented by Louis Chalif, civilian engineer. Never forget." The story of Louis Chalif and the K-14 lead computing site teaches us something profound about innovation and expertise. The greatest breakthroughs often come from outsiders who don't know what's supposed to be impossible. Credentials and degrees matter, but they can also create blind spots. Sometimes the person who solves an impossible problem is the one who doesn't know it's impossible. In 1944, every expert agreed that a mechanical computing site for flexible guns couldn't be built. They were wrong. One high school dropout with a slide rule in a basement workshop proved them wrong, and in doing so, he changed the course of history. Today, when military historians analyze the Allied victory in the air war over Europe, they cite many factors: superior numbers, better logistics, longer-range fighters, and strategic bombing doctrine. But buried in the technical appendices of official histories is a footnote about an 8-pound device that tripled fighter kill rates and saved thousands of lives. That footnote should be a headline, because Louis Chalif's story reminds us that genius doesn't require credentials, innovation doesn't require permission, and one person with a good idea and the courage to pursue it can change the world. The next time someone tells you something is impossible, remember the civilian engineer who solved the unsolvable problem in his basement. Remember the gunners who came home because of his invention. And remember that the word impossible is just an opinion, not a fact.